Today I'd like to take some time to talk to you about digestion and metabolism. I wanted to share one of the most important things I've actually learned about the digestive tract. Did you know that when food is in your digestive tract, it's not actually in your body? Hopefully by the end of this video, that'll make a little bit more sense. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the different organs of the digestive tract and describe their function. I'll compare and contrast the different stages of digestion, and we'll follow the digestive process of a piece of food. Along the way, your body is going to absorb nutrients from the food to use for energy. I'll describe the processes to break down food and how your body uses those broken down components of food to build things necessary for life. Finally, I'll explain the connection between digestion and metabolism in your life as a high school student. We'll also use some science words that your science teacher will probably be happy that you heard, but I also want to make sure that you understand this more than anything else, so my aim is to keep it as simple as possible. So let's begin with the organs of the digestive tract and what they actually do. So think about lunch today. You just got to the cafeteria after what I'm sure was a very exciting morning of learning. You're about to take your first bite of lunch. Now, this may not be obvious, but your digestive tract actually starts with your mouth. This is where food enters the digestive tract and starts the first phase of digestion called ingestion. There are 6 phases of digestion. I just mentioned ingestion, and the others are propulsion, mechanical digestion, chemical digestion, absorption, and defecation. We'll get to them, but let's get back to ingestion. You just started eating lunch, you open your mouth and take a bite of food, chew it up, and swallow it. You've been doing this your entire life, and it likely doesn't take much thought, but a whole lot is going on. Here's everything that's working. You've got your mouth, your teeth, your tongue, and salivary glands all going at the same time once that food gets into your mouth. You see, your mouth is like a gateway for the food to get into your body. Your teeth and tongue are working hard to break up the food. And you need them to break up the food so that the food can make its way into your stomach. Yeah, I mean, you can't just swallow an entire slice of pizza, right? So chewing the food into something you can swallow turns that into something called a bolus, and this is part of the process of mechanical digestion, physically breaking the food into smaller and smaller pieces. And when you're doing this, your salivary glands, which are a secondary digestive organ, are secreting saliva into your mouth. That saliva moistens the food so you can swallow it, but it also has an enzyme in it to begin chemically breaking down carbohydrates. And that enzyme is called salivary amylase. Make sure you let your biology teacher know about that one. It'll make you sound really smart. Chemical digestion is different than mechanical digestion. And with chemical digestion, the salivary amylase is breaking down the bonds in the food and breaking it into its smaller components. So think of it like you've got a whole Lego set as you're starting. And the chemical digestion is separating those Lego pieces into the individual Lego pieces. Now, let's pause for a second. You're ready to swallow the food, and we've already covered the mouth, teeth, tongue, and salivary glands. And 3 of the 6 phases of digestion have also already started. We've got ingestion, mechanical, and chemical digestion. Now that you swallow, that bolus of food makes its way into your esophagus. And don't worry, you have a flap in front of your throat, the trachea, it's called the epiglottis, and this makes sure that food doesn't get into your airway. Now, your esophagus, it's basically like a long tube that just gets the food from your mouth to your stomach. But think about it. How does it actually move there? Once you swallow it, you don't actually do anything to make the food travel down the esophagus. And this is where another phase of digestion happens called propulsion. From here on out, propulsion is what's going to help move that food through your digestive tract. Propulsion happens by a process called peristalsis, another cool science word to impress your science teacher. Peristalsis are wave-like contractions that basically keep food advancing in the right direction. Peristalsis sends that bolus of food into your stomach. That's the next step on the digestive tract. In the stomach, the bolus of food experiences mechanical digestion, and the stomach churns it, kind of bounces it around to get it into smaller and smaller pieces. Now, these smaller and smaller pieces are important because they have more surface area so that enzymes in the stomach can begin more chemical digestion. In the stomach, a fancy enzyme called pepsin, with the help of hydrochloric acid, begin to chemically break down one of the components of food, proteins. This is probably a good place to stop and highlight the different macronutrients that are going to make up the food that you're eating. We've got proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And sometimes you might hear fats referred to as lipids. Your diet is going to include a mix of these, and they all get digested and absorbed at different places in your digestive tract. So let's get back to those proteins getting broken down. The stomach is very acidic, and this bolus of food becomes something called chyme. Your stomach is also like a holding area for food getting digested. It pulses food into the next organ in your digestive tract, the small intestine. And these pulses kind of happen in spurts. You can think of it like a way to make sure not too much gets in there at once. So let's say a bit of this chyme makes its way into the small intestine. The small intestine actually has three different parts to it: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Fun fact, the small intestine is actually longer than the large intestine. So you may be thinking, what gives with the name? Well, the diameter of the small intestine is smaller than the large intestine. That's where the small comes from. So your food is in the small intestine now. Most of digestion and absorption happens in the small intestine. In the duodenum, some accessory organs get involved when it comes to chemical digestion. And there are three of them that we're going to talk about: the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Now, the liver makes bile, and bile is something that helps with the digestion of fats or lipids. Once the liver makes bile, that bile finds its way into the gallbladder. That's the second organ we talked about here. And the gallbladder's job is just to store bile. When you eat fats, bile gets secreted from the gallbladder, and through a duct, it makes its way into the duodenum. The other accessory organ that is working when food gets into the small intestine is the pancreas. The pancreas secretes pancreatic juice, and this facilitates more chemical digestion and also helps buffer that chyme that came from the stomach, because that chyme is very acidic when it leaves the stomach. Remember, we talked about hydrochloric acid. So I mentioned that most digestion and almost all absorption happens in the small intestine. Your body has now had a few different organs and secretions break the food into its smallest components. Now, if you remember from biology class, there are monosaccharides like glucose, proteins turn into amino acids, and the fats or lipids can turn into glycerol and fatty acid. So these are the little Lego blocks, and they're now small enough to make their way into the cells of your digestive tract so that they can be used by the body. What's left of the food at the end of the small intestine moves into the large intestine. The large intestine absorbs a little bit of water and creates the waste product, feces. The feces is eventually eliminated from the anus by defecation, and that is the final stage of digestion. It's pretty amazing when you think about what happened to that Uncrustable that you're going to eat at lunchtime, huh? Now, did you ever stop and wonder, what's the goal of all of this? Well, your body needs nutrients in the food for energy. So now that you have these building blocks of food in your body, how do you actually get the energy out of it? Well, that's what we're going to cover next. I'm sure you've heard of the term metabolism before, right? Well, I want to simplify exactly what that is. Metabolism is just a fancy science word for saying it's the sum of all of the chemical reactions in your body. And sorry to bring another subject into this, I like to think of it like a math equation. There's two types. The catabolic reactions are involved in breakdown, and the anabolic reactions are involved in building back up. And what's fascinating about metabolism is it's always happening, both the catabolic and anabolic reactions. Catabolic reactions release energy, and that energy is used to fuel anabolic reactions. Instead of these big science words, let's think about an example. So we just talked about carbohydrates get broken down to monosaccharides like glucose, which gets absorbed. Well, glucose is your body's main energy source. It's what your brain prefers, and your body is really set up with a number of processes to turn that glucose into the actual energy that powers work. So let's say we get back to that delicious Uncrustable. Of course, it's the peanut butter and honey kind, the best kind. And that glucose from it has been absorbed. Your body is going to take that glucose and turn it into usable energy, except it has to make you think of it like an exchange. Your body likes glucose, but uses something called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, to actually power the work. Now, the body under most circumstances does this through three processes: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. Hopefully you remembered some of these from biology class. Now, we're not going to get super deep into them today, but those represent cellular respiration, and they convert every 1 glucose molecules into 36 ATPs, which makes energy. If we go back to my first fun fact, the food in your digestive tract really doesn't get into you until it's absorbed, right? Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Then it's not in your digestive tract any longer. But your digestive tract is where all the absorption happens, and this is needed so that when you eat, your body has a way of using that food for energy. And this is what lets you walk, study, play sports, and exist. This is why food is so important, and it literally powers your life. So I hope you enjoyed learning about the different organs of the digestive tract, their functions, the stages of digestion, what metabolism means, including catabolism and anabolism, and how digestion and metabolism impacts your life. Now, eating means a lot of things to different people. We eat for energy, like we discussed here, but we also eat for enjoyment or as a way to come together as communities or families. So the next time you eat, think about how that food that you're eating is going to power your body and how it's actually going to end up providing you energy. This is why you're doing it.